It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to talk about RPort, and really this is an update to RPort. So I've covered it in the past, and I did a few videos back where I compared RPort and Mesh Central and Remotely and Rustdesk, and I'll do some on Guacamole as well because you guys have requested that one, and Tactical RMM. It looks like they have some support for Linux. I need to dig in a little bit more and kind of see what's going on there, but it looks pretty promising, so that's also a good one, and one that I haven't covered in the past. But right now I wanted to just cover RPort and kind of give you an update because last time it was great, but a few months after I made the video and put out the guide, people started having issues getting their proxies to work. And in the comments on that video, if you go far enough down, there was an awesome user named Yellow Fever, or he goes by Yellow Fever anyways, that gave a really great solution, and I've tested that, made sure it works. So I'm going to go through just the installation again in my home lab of RPort and show you how to get it up and running. Now, if you're wanting to install RPort out on a provider like DigitalOcean, I love DigitalOcean. They give all kinds of really great servers. They're extremely low cost in most cases, like $6 a month. I think they even have like a $4 a month option. You can really do a lot. It sounds like it's not a very big server, but somebody actually installed a RPort instance back then on a 1 CPU, 512 megabyte memory server. This is a crazy low amount of RAM that you're talking about. It's just one CPU, a vCPU, but they've got SSDs in there where it's really fast. And if you're not trying to deal with like 10,000 machines sending you something at a time, it's totally doable. If you've got a small client base, maybe you've got 15, 20 servers and maybe, 50 or 60 desktops, that might be able to handle it. But the nice thing about something like DigitalOcean is if you find out like, okay, I've added, half my clients and it's starting to get kind of slow and sluggish, it's really easy to go into their control panel and say, I need to upgrade this server one step. You can just take it up a step at a time till you hit the right spot. So it's really, really an awesome way to do things. I like DigitalOcean. I have an affiliate link in my description. If you go out there, you'll get, I think it's $100 credit for 60 days. So you get 60 days to try their services. You get $100 of credit. So even if you've got a super beefy server, that $100 should cover you for a couple of months. But if you go out there and get their $5 server, you can set up a whole bunch of them and run them and try them out and see what's going on. I think that's pretty awesome. The only thing I get out of it is a credit with DigitalOcean if you stick with it. If you stay with them and you start paying them, then I get a credit. If you don't, if you decide you don't like the service, I don't get anything out of it. I just wanted to tell you about it. I really like their stuff. I use it, and that's why I'm telling you about it. Today we're going to build this, though, in our home lab because, again, we've been talking about building a business on open source. We want to build up our business for open source, and if you're doing something like an MSP, a managed service provider, or if you're doing contract IT work, if you're doing anything where you're supporting other people and their machines, then RPort is a really, really amazing tool. Now, I want to be clear about their licensing. So I'm going to go over to their pricing because they do offer some support and things like that, so you can check out their pricing as well. Very useful, by the way. So I know everybody wants to get started. They want everything for free. It's really cheap that way. I get it. But I want to say that once you get going, once you're actually using these products, once you're making some money, it's really great for you to go back and say, you know what, I want to support this product. This is a product I love. This is a product I want to stick around. So please consider that. Consider going out there and getting a monthly or a yearly, whatever it is. Let's see. Build annually. Okay, $50 a year. Build annually. I mean, that's next to nothing and you get support. That's pretty awesome. Maybe you want the $160 a year. Maybe you want the big one, the $325 a year. When you think about what support costs for things like Microsoft or things like Cisco, these prices are nothing. These guys are not charging anything compared to those guys, and you're getting some great support and some really great software. Now, when I talk about the licensing, I want to be really clear. The back end, the server side of RPort is open source, okay? It is 100% open source. The user interface, web interface that they have is not open source. It is theirs. They made it. Now, their back end has an API where if you're a developer, you can go out and start developing your own user interface for it if you want to. And you can make that open source if you want to, but their front end is not open source. So I want to be very clear about that because I am the open source advocate and I don't want you guys to get the wrong impression about what RPort is or is not. So just know that if you're using RPort for business, you should really come out, get a subscription, start paying them for support. Even if it's just for you in your house, maybe you want that support. If something goes weird, maybe you want to be able to call and say, hey, something's not working. Could you please help me fix this problem? It may be worth your time to do that. So I wanted to point that out as well. What I'm going to use today is I'm going to go over here to my show notes, and I've moved it. I'm trying to update all of my different videos so that they have the correct links where I have them. And if you go out here, you can search, but you can see right here it's got a list of things I've been working on. But if you just type in the search what you want, it's going to come up with some really fast suggestions for you. So I'm just going to click on this one because that's the one that we want today. And it's got the link to my old video, so I'll add the new video to it as well. But I tell you about what it is, what you can do with it, what do you need in order to run it, on and on and on, and I give you a little bit of information. And then we're going to go into the part where we're installing the RPort server. So I'm going to start from scratch for you guys who've been watching the Building a Business on Open Source, and I'm going to put timestamps so that down here on the line on the timeline in YouTube, you can hover over that and you can see the different sections and kind of figure out, do you want to skip ahead? If you already know how to do the part where you're setting up your LXC container and you have everything ready, great. But I'm going to go through everything that I can think of to go through with you guys so that you see exactly how to get this set up and running. I'm even going to go through setting up the A record for DNS and pointing that to the right place. So I want to help you get everything very, very easily here. So stick with me. But if you want to skip ahead, please check that timeline. I've got timestamps so you can jump ahead and see the other parts. I know I get really wordy. That's why I have long content. I hope it doesn't just drive you up the wall, but it might. So we're going to get into installation right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. All right, I'm going to start from the very beginning here. So if you haven't already done this, you should get a domain name that you own. Find a domain that you like, buy it, and then get in there where you can set up the DNS. You want to go with a provider that lets you change the DNS. Now, I'm with GoDaddy on this one. I bought this one a long time ago. I've just never moved it. I really prefer Hover. I like the Hover interface. I like the ease of setup. All the features they've got work really great for me. GoDaddy kind of drives me crazy because when I log in, it depends on which way I get into the software and into their system and how I navigate to my site as to where things are. It changes no matter what. It's the worst user experience on earth, to be honest. I despise it. But if you can get to the point where you can manage your DNS, no matter who you've got, you want to set up a couple of things. So the first record is you want to set up your @ record. This says at that domain, so the main domain. So my domain is routemehome.org. And you want to point that to the public IP address of your home. So mine is dynamic. It changes over time. Now, it doesn't change very often, but it does change. So I run a little service in a Docker container that goes out and says, hey, what's the current IP? Is it the same as what you see in GoDaddy? Yes, okay. 5 minutes, it'll check again. Every 5 minutes it checks, and if it's different, it calls out here to an API and it says, hey, change this for me and update it. So it's really useful. But this is the record you want to set first. Get this thing set so that you've got an A record that says @ and then you've got this IP address that's public IP of your home or wherever you're going to run RPort from. The next one you want to set up is this one that's an asterisk right here. So this asterisk is a CNAME record. So that means it's going to point to a different record. So this asterisk record I've got set up as a CNAME record, and it points to my home IP address. So when I call anything.routemehome.org, it tries to go to this address. Then inside of my network, I run a reverse proxy called Nginx Proxy Manager. So when a request comes in, anything.routemehome.org, it says, okay, send that to this IP. When it comes to my IP address, I've got a port forward rule that says anything on 80 or 443, you need to send through to the server that runs Nginx Proxy Manager. When Nginx Proxy Manager sees that request, it says, okay, do I have an entry that matches what you just asked for? So if you were to ask for, what's it called, .routemehome.org, it would say, all right, What's it called? Oh, here's a star record. I'm going to go send that to this IP address. When it gets to my house, it's going to see the firewall. The firewall is going to say, oh, I see you're requesting a routemehome.org. I'm going to push you through to the Nginx Proxy Manager. Nginx Proxy Manager is going to go, okay, let me check. I don't know if I have that. What's it called? .routemehome.org. It's going to look through the list and it's going to go, nope, I don't have an entry for that. And it's just going to give you a friendly congratulations page. You've reached Nginx Proxy Manager. Now, inside of Nginx Proxy Manager, you can set that up to be whatever page you want. But by default, it just sends you to a congratulations page, since I don't have a record set up for what's it called .routemehome.org. So this is how you want to route your traffic. This is how I suggest you set it up. Now, you can create separate CNAME records for every subdomain you want. It's really up to you, but I just do it this way because it's really fast for me to set things up and test with. Now, once you've got this set up, the next step is to go and we're going to create our LXC container. So I'm just going to right click here and I'm going to click on Create CT. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to give this a name that I can remember. So RPort, that makes it really easy for me to identify this thing. Now we need to put in a password, so put in a pretty good password. And we're going to just hit next. We're going to pick our CT image. Now I used Ubuntu 2204. My old instructions said only 2004. It looks like they've updated, so I'm just going to pick that again. And then I've got to tell it how big do I want my system to be and where do I want to put it. So I've got to pick from all my drives. So these are all my drives or all my storage locations on my Proxmox system. You may only have one, you may have a bunch. You should know which one is the right one for you to use. So I'm going to go here to my VM clones. That's fine. It's got some room. I want to make this thing about 64 gigs. It probably doesn't have to be that big, but we'll go with it. And then I'm going to move on to the next step here. And I'm going to give this 2 cores, even though you could probably go with 1. I'm going to give it 2. Now, if you don't have enough cores, go with 1. That's fine, but I've got enough to go with 2. On memory, I'm going to set this up to 2048 and 2048. That's 2 gigs. If you have more memory, go for it. If you need to give it a little bit more, it's fine. If you want to give it a little bit less, try 1024. That's fine. You can always start over if it doesn't work out. That's the nice thing about doing things with containers. So the next thing we've got here is the network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this do DHCP first. And once it gets an address, I'm going to go back and set this as static in the options or the hardware area. So we're just going to move to next. With DNS, I just leave it like it is. And we're going to go here and check the summary. And we're going to say, yes, create that thing. So it's going to create this container for us. Gives you a little bit of output. You can actually close this before it's finished if you want to. It'll still work in the background. But when it's done, just click on the little X over here. And now we've got our container, and you can see here it's getting created. It'll say RPort when it's finished here, so we'll just give it another minute or so. There it is, RPort. So we're going to click on it. Now you can right click, we're going to click on Start. We're going to start up our container, and then we're going to click here on the console. I know this is all kind of small, but if I make it too big, it just really makes the system look weird. Let's see, I can try. Yeah, we can go a little bit bigger. It's kind of odd, but there we go. How about that? So when you first log in, you're just going to log in as root, and you're going to use that password that you put in when you were going through the wizard. Now what I do first is I say add user. I'm going to put in my name. Now because this is Ubuntu, it lets you do add user. If you're using a different distribution, you'll probably have to do user add and do a few extra steps to create a home directory, but add user does it all for you, which is really nice. So I'm going to say add user and then my username that I want. And it's going to ask me for a password. So I'm going to put in a password here. And then I'm going to just skip through all this. You can fill this out if you want to. I'm going to hit Y for yes, I like all this information, and it's created my user now. So the next thing I'm going to do is create my sudo user. So I'm going to say user mod hyphen little a capital G space sudo for the group name and then space and Brian for the person that I'm adding to the sudo group. I'm going to hit enter. So now I am a sudo user in the system. So I can do exit. It's going to log me out. I'm going to log in as Brian. And I'm in. I'm going to clear this out. And I'm going to do sudo apt update ampersand sudo apt upgrade -y. So what this says is update my repository information so I know what all the latest updates are. And then this just says, okay, I'm going to run another command. So just keep them, run them in one line, but it's 2 commands. This one says upgrade the system with all of those updates you just pulled. And this just says don't prompt me, just do it. So I'm going to hit enter. It's going to ask me for my super user password. So this is our first test to make sure we did super user correctly. And it's working, so we did. It's going to go out and try to pull down all of these updates real quick, and then we'll be back. Alright, I've updated and upgraded my system. I have logged in through SSH in a regular terminal. I use the Tabby terminal emulator. I love it. It's great, but feel free to use any terminal emulator you want. But make sure you're in the system where you want to install RPort. So the one thing we need to do is go set a static IP. I had an issue with my recordings, and 2 of my sections got just nothing. They were blank screens, so I'm starting with this part again. So if we do a simple command, IP-BR -CA, we can see that our IP address from DHCP is .111 in my IP range. So I'm going to go back into Proxmox here, and I'm just going to double click on the network, and I'm going to double click right here. That's going to open it up. I'm going to set it to static. I'm going to set this to 192.168.10.111, and then I'm going to do /24. And then I'm going to go to the gateway and put 192.168.10.1. Now you should use your IP range. Sometimes the gateway is .1, sometimes it's .254. It just depends on what router you have and what you've set up. So you may have a totally different setup, but hopefully you know what that is. But we're going to set this static. We're just going to click OK. Next time we reboot it, it'll take effect, but at least it'll keep that same IP address, and that's what we want for the end result here. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go back to my instructions, and I've got a few things that I tell you to do. So the install step is one command here, but it does require curl and I think git at least, if not wget also. So I suggest that you install those things as well. So I've got this command right here for installing that. So we're just going to copy it. And I'm going to go back over here to my terminal emulator, and I'm just going to paste that in. I'm going to hit enter. Again, sudo user is set up, so we're just going to put in our sudo password, and it's going to install those 3 applications real quick. It usually only takes about 10-15 seconds. Alright, so we've installed git, wget, and curl. So we're going to go back to our instructions here. And we're going to run this command now to go get the RPort installer. Just going to copy that, go back to my terminal emulator here, and paste it in. Let it run. It's going to go grab that, just pull it down real quick. It's not a very big file, so it doesn't take very long. There we go, it's done. So we have that file installed right now. Now I'm going to create another record, and I'm going to call this RPort install script. It's not really a script, it's just a bunch of commands, but it's fine. We're going to call that txt just for a text file. So we're going to nano that dude, and then we're going to go back to our instructions here. And we're just going to go down, and I've got 2 sets of instructions here. So I've got the set that says set this up with email, but it's expecting you to set up your email so that you can get email 2-factor authentication going. Definitely with an RMM like this, where you're doing remote machine management, you want to have 2-factor authentication. I don't really like doing it through email. It's too susceptible to other problems, but I definitely, TOTP, one-time PIN feels better, so you can use Google Authenticator. I use Bitwarden for it, which keeps all my stuff really together and encrypted and safe. So I'm just going to highlight all of this. I'm just going to copy it with Control-C. I'm going to go back to my terminal emulator. I'm going to paste it with Control-Shift-V, like Victor. Now we got to make we got to make a change, and then you may have to make more than one, so we're just going to kind of go through and let you look at it. So these ports here, the client port, this is how the RPort agent connects to the server. This is how your different client machines connect to the server. So if port 8000 is already in use and forwarded on your network, you need to pick a different port right here. Just remember what you pick. The API port is how you see the web interface. So that's their web interface that is not open source. Keep that in mind. The backend is open source. The web interface that they provide is not open source, okay? But this is the API port that you use to connect to that web interface. So if you need a different port, make sure to change this as well right here. Now here we want to give it the domain that we want. So in my case, I'm going to create a domain called myrport.routemehome.org. There we go. Make sure I spell that correctly, get everything in there. And then this last port range is how RPort creates tunnels to connect to your various machines that you've got set up as agent RPort things. So if this range is already in use on your router and you're forwarding to any of these ports already, just change the range. It's fine. Change it here and then make sure you forward that port range in your router to the machine where you're running RPort. So we're going to save this with Control-O and Enter. Just double check, make sure our spelling looks good. Everything's good there. And then we'll do Control-X to exit. So we're going to cat that out, which is RPort install. There we go. And we can see all of our stuff. Somebody on the comments told me how to do these multi-line things without having to do this and still be able to make changes, but I just honestly don't remember how to do it, so I need to go back and write that down so I can remember. But I'm going to just copy that in here, make sure everything looks good, and I'm just going to hit enter to run this installation. It's going to go out and do its thing. It's usually pretty quick, so be patient. It should run pretty fast, and it should give you some pretty good output here. Alright, so that's done. We've got everything up and running, and it gives you some really important information, so do not clear the terminal right away when this finishes. This little section of information you definitely want to grab. So we can just copy all of this right here, do Control-Shift-C, or you can right-click and copy, whichever you want. And then I'm going to create a file, so I'm going to do nano info-rport.txt. I'm going to do Control-Shift-V to paste that in there, and I'm going to save it with Control-O and Enter, and then exit with Control-X. The reason I want to do this is that, one, it tells you where to go to get to your site, but now we're not going to need this port if you set up the reverse proxy. If you don't want to set up a reverse proxy, you can use this port. It's fine. Next thing is it gives us our initial admin user and password. So I'm going to go in, use this, change the password, set up the new user, whatever you want to do. But make sure you just have this initially. You definitely want to go change this. You don't want to leave it. You want to make it a much stronger password if nothing else, okay? We're going to need our app like Bitwarden to create a one-time token when we log in the first time. But really, everything should be set up as far as the installation goes. Alright, so the next section in my instructions is the A record or CNAME record. We did that in the beginning of the video, so you don't need to do it again. But if you didn't do it with me, then you may need to go set this up. So just don't forget to go and get this ready. But we want to set up our reverse proxy. So that's kind of the next step. We're going to go over here. We're going to just open up Nginx Proxy Manager. Now I'm going to go to my proxy hosts and I'm going to say add a new proxy. And I called this myrport.routemehome.org. Now you'll use your own domain and subdomain, but once you type that in, hit tab, and it should get that little gray background so you can tell that it's a chip and it's saved. If you don't hit tab and you move to another field with your mouse, that'll go away. We're going to leave this HTTP. We're going to put in 192.168.10.111. That's the address that it runs at. I left it on 5000 for the API, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to say block common exploits, WebSocket support, and I'm just going to save. I'm not going to get any SSL certificates or anything yet because there's another step we need to do. We're going to go back to our terminal here. We're just going to clear this out so you can see it a little bit better. On YouTube, about 2 to 3 months after my initial RPort video came out, RPort made an update, and suddenly when you try to set up Nginx Proxy Manager, it wouldn't work. It would give you a 502 bad gateway all the time, even if things were up and running. And somebody in my comments found the solution and posted it, which was awesome. So he goes by Yellow Fever, so he's awesome for doing this. So I can't say thank you enough for this. But what we're going to do is we're going to do sudo nano, and we're going to do /etc/rport/rportd.conf. Okay, so make sure you type it in just like that. And it should come up with a big file like this. And what we want to do is we want to find a certain part of the file. So we're going to do Control-W to search. And we're going to type in CERT_FILE, just like this. We're going to hit enter, and it's going to find this first one that deals with the tunnel proxy. We do not want to change that one. So we're going to do Control-W and enter, and it's going to just leave us in that same area. We're going to do Control-W one more time, and we're going to jump out there, and Control-W one more time, and there we are. This is the one that we want to edit. So it says cert file and key file, and all we want to do is I'm going to go down one line and back right here, and I'm just going to highlight that second quote, and I'm going to take everything out in between the two quotes. So I just want 2 quotes, nothing else. Same thing on the key file line. I'm just going to go out here to the second quote and just erase everything between the quotes. I'm going to say Control-O to save. Just double check, make sure it's got the right name, hit enter. Control-X to exit. And then I'm going to do a reboot of my server that's running RPort. Luckily with an LXC container, reboots take about 15-20 seconds total. I mean, it's just incredibly fast. We can probably SSH back in here pretty quick. So we're just going to hit SSH, just hit the up arrow if that's the last thing you did from the machine you're on. There it is, it's already ready for the password. And we are back in, so everything's running, should be good. So now we're going to jump back over to our reverse proxy. We're going to go down and find that entry in here. which is right here, myrport.routemyhome.org. And you see, I've got HTTP only. It's not got Let's Encrypt yet. So we're going to go over to the end. We're going to click on the three dots, click on Edit. We're going to go here to SSL. We're going to drop this down and say I'm going to request a new SSL certificate. Force SSL, we're going to tick. HTTP2 support, we're going to tick. And HSTS, we're going to tick. Make sure that you have your email address in here. And then click on the little icon for I agree, or the little switch here. And then click on Save. Now sometimes when I do this, it'll give me a little red bar up here with no error in it. And sometimes that means it worked, sometimes not. But if this just goes away with nothing like that, it definitely worked. So we can look right here and see my RPort, and here it is. It's got Let's Encrypt now. So if we click on this, it'll open us up. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and you remember that file we created? We're just going to cat that out, info.rport or info-rport.txt. And there's admin. I'm going to copy just the password right here. Right click and copy. And I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to type in admin, and I'm going to paste in that password. I'm going to tell it to remember me for 7 days is fine, or let's do 7 days. That's good. We're going to log in. It's going to say, hey, you need to set up your authentication app. So I'm going to tell it, don't save. I'm going to go in here to my authenticator app, and I'm going to tell it I'm ready to do my TOTP. I'm going to use my phone to grab this QR code. I'm going to hit save inside of my app here, and it's going to give me a code, and I'm just going to tell it, all right, let's verify that I've got the right code set up. 227589, and we'll verify. And we're in. So we are logged in. Now, you're going to jump down to Settings. We're going to go to Profile. We're going to type in the old password here. I like that. That should be pretty hard to guess. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to save it. My password's updated. Now I should be able to log out. I'm going to log back in as admin, put in my password. Sure. It's going to ask me for my code. I'm going to go back to my authenticator app here and verify. There we go. We're back in. So we've got everything pretty much set up the way that we need it. Now there's a few things you can look at here in the settings. It's very important that you kind of check this out. We're going to just get rid of this bar because it's pushing things down. But right now I'm not actually in this dark mode, I don't believe. I think it's just using the dark reader. So we'll uncheck that. Yeah, so it's white. Okay, I'm sorry. But if you move down into the themes, you can see there's a dark theme. So it's probably better to pick that. Just click save. You'll have the dark theme back on, and it's going to look a little better. You can use Secure Shell extension for Chrome if you want to. It's completely up to you if you want to do that for SSH. I just use the terminal. It's much easier. You got 50 as far as the history. So if you're not going to be doing Windows machine, you don't want to download those things for an RDP session, whether it's Windows or Mac. If you're using Linux like I am, you probably want to do it this way. Just click that option to open those up in the RDP / schema. It'll work great because it's going to use guacamole in the background. You'll really like it. Vertical on the navigation menu is up to you. If you change it to horizontal, it just changes this very left menu here and puts it across the top. I kind of prefer it on the left side there. And then down here, enter your RDP default username if you have one. If you don't, just leave it blank. It's fine. And then again, hit save to make those changes. So in here, you can add users and edit users and things like that as the administrative user. You can create user groups, and then you can assign those groups permissions for various machines. You can go in here and basically set up a client access. This is how you add clients, and we'll do that here in just a minute. You've got client groups, so you can group those clients much more easily. You can add those things and assign clients to certain groups because it's easier to find them. You've got the vault, which you can set up, and you can kind of set up the API keys for that. Your API tokens you can generate, again, to use the API. You've got information about the system itself. If you click on help, it takes you to their help page. And if you click on license, it tells you about the license, that this is not an open source product, but the backend is. So there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to go through a little bit of it, but I've gone through a lot of it in the past. But I just wanted you guys to kind of see those settings real quick. All right, once you've got RPort set up, installed and ready to go, you're going to come to a page like this. Now, this is going to be pretty bright and white. I apologize for that, but I want you to be able to see everything that's on the RPort setup. So the first thing you want to do is go down here to settings. You want to go to users, and you actually want to just not use this main admin system function. So I've already set myself up as an administrator. I'm going to delete that admin account. I'm the administrator of this system now. Now you have the option to set up user groups. It's completely up to you how many groups you set up and what roles you apply to that. But just know that you have that. I'm the only one in this system, so there's nothing else for me to set up. You can initially go to your profile to change your password, and you can edit your username and save those changes if you need to. Now we're going to come back to settings. So you've got this theme, which is blue by default, but here's the dark theme. So I'm going to change it to the dark theme here in a second for you guys. And once we've got that, we're going to hit save. And you see the dark theme is much nicer and much easier on the eyes. That's one of the nicest things about it. And we did change this to horizontal, but I still see the vertical menu. But if you look across the top now, you have some different options here as well. So you've kind of got these tabs. Now if I go back to settings, I can go back here and I can say vertical. And then I can save this thing. And now whenever we do this, you see that it's kind of got these other options over here on the left. So it's very much up to you how you do this. You can move, it's really this bar here that is talking about that it'll move. I think the vertical's fine. It doesn't cause me any problems. So the real big thing is client access. So I've got these different machines that I've already given client access, but I want to add a new one. So I'm going to add access. It generates an ID and a key. That's fine. So this is kind of the password, I guess you'd say. Now I can give this client whatever ID I want. So I'm just going to call this Win11 VM. It generates the password for me, and that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and hit add a client. It's going to pop up this screen that says, hey, here's how you can add this stuff. So it's going to say enable remote script and command execution. You can get all these things set up. You can uncheck the ones that you may not want, because there may be situations where you don't want all of this access. Make sure you kind of check out what it really says. But down here for Windows, they give you this where you can run this in the command line or PowerShell. So we're going to copy this to the clipboard. Okay, so there's 1,000 ways to do this, but I can tell you now that if you try to cut and paste through a virtualization system, it's a pain in the backside. It just depends on how you can log into the system. But if you're local to the system to set it up the first time, just open up your browser and log into your RPort instance. It will make it so much better for you. The easiest thing is to just go to the machine that you want to log into and log in. Of course, don't save any of your credentials on a client's machine. That's always a bad idea. But once you're in, again, just jump down to settings, go to client access. We've already created the access token, so we just need to actually go and get it. So find that row and then click on this button here, and it'll bring up the information that we need. We can copy this. We should be able to go back to our PowerShell. Run it as an administrator. Let's see if it'll paste a little bit nicer for us this time. We should get some pretty good output whenever we do this correctly. So you should see something like this when you get it set up correctly. And now we've got our port set, so we can close out of these things. And we should be able to go back to our home screen. And under all, yeah, there we go. My count didn't update for some reason, but here's my Win11 VM1, so I can click on it. It's still gathering some statistics. It may take a little while for the update status to come in, but it is connected, which is a good start. So we've got things going at least from that standpoint. Now we've still got my other servers, so I can see what's their status, what's going on with them. Of course, I can see if they need any updates, things like that, which is awesome. I can check out my home servers as well. So kind of keeping an eye on things for the Linux side, the Windows side. This is really an incredible tool. Very, very useful. It's really, again, this is more of an MSP style tool. You're going to be doing remote machine management, not remote support, in my opinion. This is really just a terrific tool. It's got so many different things you can do. Now, I've gone over this in a recent video as well, so I suggest you go check that one out, where I've compared several of the open source remote applications that are out there and gave you a comparison chart. I'm adding Guacamole to that. I'll add Tactical RMM when I get done with it as well. But this is really an incredible tool, and I've shown you how to get it installed, how to set up your Nginx reverse proxy, and how to get logged in and actually set up a Windows machine. Now, if you're doing headless Linux machines, it's the same thing. Copy the command that they give you for Linux, go to that machine, just SSH in, paste it in, and it will register itself onto the network, and you can set up that machine. And then you've got this all, again, you can create these other groups to make things a little bit segregated, easier to find and see and manage. But I mean, really and truly, just absolutely a great system. There we go. We've got our Windows 11 stats coming in. You can see how it's running. You can see if it's got any updates that it needs. So it does need an update right now. So we can look at more details for the updates. Now this is still running on the Windows 11 machine, so we can just close this out and we can actually close out our remote desktop here. We can go back into our RPort installation and we'll see our Windows 11 machine in our all section now. So we can go up here to all, we can go to Windows 11, and again, even with the dark mode, you can see everything is happening, and you can see again that it's got an update. So we can say refresh if we want to check for updates. Here it gives us some detail on the update. So I've gone through and just created a tunnel real quick. I'm going to click on this button to launch the tunnel. This is going to send me into a remote desktop client. I'm going to put in my username and my password for this machine. If you have a domain, you'd want to put that in as well. If there's any kind of security setup, anything like that, then you want to check those as well. So we can kind of check that. Keyboard layout, if you need to do that, English US in my case. We're going to do connect. So you can see it connects here. It doesn't give us the greatest screen resolution, but it's good enough to get some work done very quickly. And again, we're just here in the browser doing this, but I can click on the button. I can type in to search what I'm looking for, which is updates. Check for updates. And I'll just click on run the or check for updates. And there's that security update we talked about. It's already downloading. It's going to start installing. So I've done everything and never left the browser to do this. So everything's up and running. I've created a secure tunnel. So it's not something where I had to have RDP on the system and open ports to be able to get to it. This really just created a secure tunnel from my system to the system that runs RPort. So that's really awesome. There we go. I'm up to date. Everything looks good. I can just leave this. I don't have to stay in it. I can just close it. I'm out. I can go and destroy the tunnel. So just click on this. The tunnel is going to get destroyed. I don't need it anymore. Nobody else needs to have access to it, and we're set. So really a super, super great system. Makes it very easy to utilize things like RDP, remote desktop, just remote management in general. And don't forget, you can do a lot of scripting. You can do multiple commands to multiple machines. You can run scripts on multiple machines at once. So from a remote management system, this is absolutely terrific. RPort is great. The back end is open source, which makes it awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.